Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here this morning for our 8th Building Bridges Conference. I'm Andrew Clark, and I direct the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy here at CCSU. It's so great to see so many friends and familiar faces in the audience. It's not something that is normally done or that I normally do at a conference, because I know sometimes it makes people feel uncomfortable, but I just need to ask, who was at Michelle Alexander last night? All right. And I've been asking some folks in the crowd, what'd you think? And I think everybody came out of it energized and with a real sense of urgency of, what we need to do moving into the future here. So hopefully today will inspire, educate, and allow us to continue that conversation into what we can do here in Connecticut, in particular, to continue this conversation about ending mass incarceration. I want to note, first off, who can't be here today. It's someone whose spirit is felt and who, was really wanted to be here, but he's had to deal with tragedy in his life, and that's Fred Hodges, out of Bridgeport. And I really want to just say that we'll miss him today, but we'll keep his spirit in this conference. I also want to thank, the staff at the IMRP. This is the 15th year anniversary of us doing this conference, and I wasn't exactly sure we were going to do one this year. We've, like many of others of you, have had a hit in funding and been scrambling around in a number of ways. But when the opportunity arose and the students and faculty got Michelle Alexander here, it just seemed like too good of an opportunity to miss. And luckily, this space was available this next day. And so it's only been a couple months in planning. And it's something that could not have been done without the work of the folks at the Institute. Hannah Hurwitz, Ken Barone, Amjad Khan, Mary Janicki, John Noonan, Josh Thoreau, who's doing all the videos around the conference, Alex Sarkoff, John Noonan. So I just want to thank them for putting this all together, because it's been in short order, and as normal, they do a tremendous job, and it's been a real team effort. So, thank you. One of the things is, that's like me having a crazy idea, and then all of a sudden they go ahead and do it, and I'm very thankful for that. And one of the things that they make fun of me, and they do this at home too, is I'm kind of like a hoarder. We moved downtown in New Britain from campus, and I still haven't unpacked all my things, and this was like 3 years ago. But part of what I hoard too is, so we started this in 2003, and over the past few months, as we've been planning for this, I've been going back in the videos and some of the documents that we created. When I first did this, I was working over at the legislature for Bill Dyson, and I feel a little odd right now without him by my side. I know he's going to be here in a little bit, but it was with a fax machine and calling and not even emails at that point. But 2003, we had it at Welty Hall, where it was last night with Michelle Alexander, and it was the launch of the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, which is now a national initiative. And we had Renee Muir, who now works with us as part of the staff, worked with the Council of State Governments, and we introduced the Prison Overcrowding Act. And that was a significant act. It signaled that time period was when we ended the out-of-state prisoner contracts. And we signaled a change of approach from this tough-on-crime wave to being a little bit smarter about it. And one thing I'll note about that, and I've paid attention to what's happening at the legislature the past couple of days. Andrew McDonald was co-chair of the Judiciary Committee at that time. And he was working with Mike Lawler. And this wasn't really his issue. But in in the span of, and Renee can back me up on this, in the span of about 2 hours, he took a 100 and something page bill and knew it back, forth, center, right, left, and was able to bring it out in Senate, in the Senate, in not a very welcoming atmosphere, and was able to pass that bill unanimously. And I just wanted to note that because I was looking back at one of the conference videos, and he was on there. And so that was 2003. 2006 came along. We had our first conference from when I was here. And we asked, how is the Prison Overcrowding Act going? How are we implementing that? I had shifted over from the legislature to work in the executive and judicial side and started to realize how important it is to focus on implementation. At the legislature, you often look at wins being passing something. And really 95% of the work is in the implementation. So we started to ask, what are we doing? How are we doing it? We were so happy about, changing the dynamic at the legislature, but did that occur in the implementation process? A few things that came out in 2006 were the creation of the Sentencing Task Force, which is now the Sentencing Commission. We created the Criminal Justice Undersecretary position over at OPM, something to give real teeth to this idea of this needs to be a coordinated effort if it's going to work. In 2008, we had Building Bridges as a drug policy conference. We brought in Ethan Nadelman, we had Gabriel Saye and Lorenzo Jones, who are now with Catal, who helped co-sponsor this tonight, and we'll hear Lorenzo on the next panel. And we were asking about harm reduction. We were asking, what is this war on drugs, and does it make sense? And in 2010, we came back and we had it focused solely on children with incarcerated parents. And we focused on stories. And the idea was, so much of the policy discussion was around the individual, and we were losing sight of the collective impact on families, on communities, and the like. So we wanted to bring that to bear. And I think in 2010 launched Trevor Johnson when he was on the panel, and then he just reminded me last night that's when he first met Michelle Alexander, shortly thereafter, when he was speaking about CIP out in the Center Force Conference. I believe that was in California. Fast forward to 2014, and we asked, where is Connecticut with justice reinvestment? We had done a lot on the side, and we started to see decarceration happening. But the whole promise of justice reinvestment wasn't just decarceration. It was, where are you reinvesting? Where are you taking those resources? And we knew places where people were coming from, and the question was, are we putting our resources in those places? Not necessarily within the justice system, but in things like education and housing and employment opportunities for folks, and transportation infrastructure. And we wanted to ask, what's happening? And we also brought the Vera project here, and Vera is here today. And we had a presentation, if you recall, on the European American Prison Project. And that's when they had first gone to Germany with a few select individuals and came back and were presenting on their insights there. And their insights on one of the key takeaways that I always bring with me is this idea out in Germany and a lot of Europe, and I know Michelle talked about the Norway and a lot of the other countries last night, is that punishment is the taking away of freedom there. Everything else is about making people whole. And I think everybody understands here in the U.S., we have had a thirst for perpetual punishment. We have not invested in the dignity of individuals and separated that thirst for punishment with the need for addressing people's issues and what got them there in the first place, and how to make our society whole. The governor often talks about the second chance society, and that's often placed on the individual coming out of the system. But I think, as Michelle Alexander talked about last night, about this nation being reborn, our society is asking for a second chance. We need to ask ourselves, what can we do to make this better, not just put it on the individual. In 2016, the Reentry Roundtables came together along with the Malta Justice Initiative, and we put on a conference. And we looked at things like the PEN Act, what we had been doing now with racial profiling. We brought trauma awareness to the table. And also the medicated assisted treatment program, which was in its nascent stages at that time. And we'll be hearing more about that later today. You know, the Institute has also, we helped to co-sponsor the Reimagining Justice project, and Michelle talked last night about reimagining justice. And I think that was another key takeaway of the European trip that the governor and Commissioner Semple went on, and that, you know, of the entire project with Vera, is reimagining the justice system. You know, I talked to some folks today who have been working in the system for years, you know, just about tinkering around the edges. You know, we've been tinkering around the edges. It's time to really reimagine what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I feel my sense, kind of like Michelle was talking about with the fellow from Oakland, this urgency now that I haven't felt before, that we can't just tinker around the edges. And I think that that conversation about reimagining justice helps to bring us there. So one of the other things that Michelle talked about was the role of higher education, one of the questions that was asked. And, you know, it was asked, what can a university do? And I think that provides a tremendous opportunity. When I first came here from the legislature in 2005, I really saw the universities as the potential partners in this fight against mass incarceration. How can we mobilize the resources of these vast enterprises here, these tremendous systems of education, to assist the state in its effort to decarcerate and to be smart about what we're doing? And you know, it's been a struggle, but I think the conversation last night provides an opportunity for us to continue that conversation and to collectively ask, what as a university, what as a system are we doing to be a partner in this struggle? We've come out on the immigration side, but we have not come out on incarceration. And I think it's time that we do that. And one of the things that she focused on was the need for students to be at the table. You know, it's students that demanded Africana studies. It's students that demanded LGBT studies. It's students that demanded women's studies. And I'm happy to say that students at this university are taking the lead in this conversation on mass incarceration. And one thing that we had never done at one of these conferences, and which, you know, I am remiss, again, another moment, is have a student address this audience in any meaningful way. And I'm happy to say, it just happened out of serendipity. One of the conversations that occurred last night was, what can the university do? And there are numerous departments that are teaching Michelle Alexander on campus. I think you'd be happy to know that. English professors, journalism professors, you know, anthropology professors, political science professors. And they're bringing students to the fore. And I think we have the benefit of one of the student leaders on campus now to address what can students bring in a sense of urgency to this issue. And let's listen to them and hear what they have to say, just like Bill Dyson was saying. Let's listen. Let's have a conversation about this. And let's bring the students into this conversation, the young people, where I really get a sense, and I think I'm not the only one, that their sense of urgency is what is needed at this time. So I'd like to introduce Shihani Ghazi. She is currently a senior at Central Connecticut State University. She's a psychological science major and a sociology minor, and a member of Psi Chi International Honor Society and the Golden Key International Honor Society. On campus, she's currently president of the Black Student Union and a resident assistant for Barrows Hall. Through her leadership positions on campus, Shihani is currently working alongside the university's administrators to implement more programs containing a curriculum that includes the topic of diversity and social justice training. She believes that these programs are essential to not only the students' transitional experience into college, but into the world. Her aspiration after graduation is to use her career field to promote social change and deconstruct social injustices. Let's welcome Shihani to the stage.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Andrew and the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy for giving me this opportunity to speak today in front of all of you. And I must admit, when I was asked to speak about this topic, it was hard to write down what to say because there's just so much to say when it comes to the injustices in the criminal justice system and mass incarceration. When I look around the room today and I see so many people who are interested in reforming the criminal justice system and who are interested in putting a stop to mass incarceration, I feel so honored. And I truly appreciate each and every one of you who are in this room today, to discuss this topic. Because it takes all of us to make a change. But when it comes to this topic, I feel the word change is so small. It's such a small and insufficient word to be used to describe the need that is needed for mass incarceration and injustices in the criminal justice system. It just seems so underrated, lack for a better word, because what we need is a revolution. We need a revolution in how the society has functioned and how it operates. We need a reconstruction of the institutions that has kept this system vital. So when we talk about the criminal justice system and mass incarceration, and when we speak about reform, we must discuss the issues of institutionalized racism and its major role that it has on its entity and how it exists today, which rooted from the 13th Amendment. Well, if anyone has watched the 13th Amendment, the 13th documentary, then you already know about the breakdown, the brief history of the origins of mass incarceration. And for those of you who has not watched the documentary, well, I will discuss it here today. See, the origins of mass incarceration could be tracked back to the end of slavery or the end of the Civil War, when the South lost the war and ended a system of their income, slavery, to the new form of industrialization. So they knew that they could no longer enslave and exploit Black lives in the old form of the slavery system. And most of all, they were threatened by the new reality of an influx of newly freed slaves as part of the demographic, potentially competing for the white man's resources, jobs, and opportunities. So they immediately created a new system, as we know as sharecropping, where newly freed slaves found themselves once again trapped and indebted to their masters and their plantations. However, once sharecropping has faded away, and simultaneously the first phase of the Reconstruction era started to come in, their threat had heightened it even more, for they found themselves sitting in Congress with a bunch of Negroes who has now gained political power. So now they had to create a new system, a new society of America. This new phase, or this first phase of the Reconstruction era, was soon ended by The Birth of the Nation, a notorious film that created a depiction of the criminalized Black man. And with this creation, the emergence of the Jim Crow laws and era started. Now, with the help of this film and the Jim Crow laws, the system of white supremacy had socially constructed a deeply embedded criminalization of the Black man, And may I add, the dehumanization of the black man. For I like to think that when slavery ended, the black man was given his sense of freedom, but he was never given his sense of humanity. So we must not forget the significance of that film in the Jim Crow laws and era, and this false solution that had depicted the black man as a rapist, uncivilized, raging beast, a depiction that is subconsciously in our minds to this day. Because it is this depiction that has single-handedly justified the lynchings, incarceration, the demoralization, and just plain injustice towards black men and the black community to this day. So it became an integral tool towards the secession of Jim Crow law and era and the civil rights movement. The depiction of the black man became essential to the Southern strategy. Now, they couldn't say nigger anymore, so they replaced the word with criminal. They replaced the whole essence of the word nigger with the war on crime, the war on drugs, law and order. But really, it was a strategy to keep the black man in the community and the demographic from obtaining the white man's resources, opportunities, and jobs. To keep them at a second-class citizenship status, to keep them detained, to keep them systematically enslaved. Because when it has been estimated that there is currently more African-American men in prison today than there were slaves in the country towards the end of the slavery before the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, and please do not shy away from the truth that mass incarceration and the entity that exists in this country today is modern-day slavery. Mass incarceration today is just an extension of slavery. And how is that? Well, because neither slavery or involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. And by doing so without involving race and creating a system without implicitly saying what they were doing. As Michelle Alexander states, mass incarceration is truly the backlash of the civil rights movement. While I like to add, mass incarceration is the backlash since the first black man was freed in this country. So when the Southern strategy dominated our political system, it became easy to create bills and legislation stripping our rights that was gained from the civil rights movement. As they created bills such as the mandatory sentencing laws, the 3 strikes you're out rule, that have little by little stripped away black Americans' rights fought from the civil rights movement, and thus further de-enfranchising black individuals, and most importantly, hauling in more black men and from the streets into the cages disproportionately for crimes such as drug possession, where black men are charged the same amount of time for an ounce of crack cocaine compared to 100 ounces for powdered cocaine. See, overall, to this day, this depiction of the criminalized black man has justified the disproportionate sentencing of black men for crimes committed more by white individuals in this country. Due to these strategies, policies such as the drug-free zone has also been unveiling in this country as well. And this injustice has been justified because of this depiction. So when we speak of the criminal justice system and mass incarceration, and when we speak about reform, we must speak this truth. We must be reminded of its origins to fully understand the beast that we are dealing with today. We must first speak of racism and its role, because if racism is a tool of white supremacy, The mass incarceration is the complex and well-oiled and refined machine that was constructed from it. And this will help us understand why, when I think about the criminal justice system, I think about my uncle, and I think about my close relatives who are incarcerated and have been incarcerated or in the system all their lives. I think about the Black Student Union and how more than half my members raised their hand when I asked them if they had close relatives in the system as well. And I say system in the system as well. I mean that, well, as we all know, once you're in the system, you never leave it. Because with the system comes a permanent second-class citizen status that makes it hard for these Black men to gain jobs and re-entry into a society and into communities. So they're more likely to re-admit back into the same system. So when we discuss reform today, we need to discuss implementing programs that will help formerly incarcerated individuals to reintegrate back into the Black communities. We need to have jobs for them when they come back for this community. Matter of fact, we just need to have a discussion about placing more jobs in the Black and brown communities, period. Because mass incarceration reflects the lack of it. Because just like Michelle Alexander stated when discussing about not criminalizing individuals that were in jail because of drug addiction, we must not criminalize those who were incarcerated because they were trying to make a living. We must not criminalize, thank you. We must not criminalize those who suffer from having deprived economic opportunity, because let's be real. Many Black men that sit in prisons for life sentences today, many of them were incarcerated for selling drugs to make a living and to feed their families. So let's not criminalize them. Let's speak this truth. Let's find a solution. Let's implement more jobs in Black and brown communities, period. When we discuss reform, we must discuss the education system and how the criminal justice system and the education system interplay along with race. I once heard a quote that by the time a Black boy turns 8, he is deemed a threat to society. And to me, this is clear and this is apparent when I look at the school-to-prison pipeline across this country, and how Black and brown children have had a chance to encounter the criminal justice system by the age of 13, with the formation of policies in their own school systems, such as the Gun-Free School Acts and the Zero Tolerance policies, that marks the beginning of many Black and brown children's lives in the system by the age of 13. Making justifiable having a superintendent stating, to count the number of Black children in 3rd grade that could not read at the grade level, because it will be the number of beds that will be needed for the prisons in the future. A statement from a superintendent, a formal Hartford superintendent, may I remind you. Therefore, we need to reanalyze and reconstruct this in-school, out-of-school suspension program. We need to stop with the policies that puts children into the criminal justice system. We need to improve and upgrade our programs to programs such as the Restorative Justice Program that has shown to improve behavioral instances and the need for in-school, out-of-school suspension by half in places like Oakland, California. We need to start integrating trained social workers and counselors to deal with behavioral issues in school and start creating a bond between the student and the teachers. And most importantly, especially in the inner cities, we need to start integrating people in the community teaching the children in the community. We need more people of color who understands Black children, Black culture and Black experiences to teach these Black children. Because Black children are tired of going into classrooms with white teachers that have no idea of their experiences or their existence. And when it comes to higher education, we must hold our higher institutions accountable to teach about this truth, about the truth about mass incarceration, and implementing social justice and diversity training programs as a requirement, especially to our criminology majors on campus. We need to identify and strip away this fear, this depiction, this unconscious belief that we all hold. And when we discuss the criminal justice system, well, first and foremost, we need to start having people of the community, again, we need to have more people of the community policing the people of the community. We need to start having women and men in the communities who understand the Black experience. Once again, a common theme of the need. Overall, we need to start forming relationships between the police and Black and brown communities. We need cops who are not from the community to understand that Black and brown lives matter. And we need people to understand that people are suffering from psychological PTSD from enduring these injustices for generations. And to do that, they must understand the history of the formation of the criminal justice system and the entity of the police as it relates to the Black community. And overall, we need good cops. And we need these good cops to create a sense of community with one another. And we need good cops to speak up when they witness injustice as well. Because silence is the bloodline of oppression. And the men in blue, its strongest vein is through you. You see, when we talk about the criminal justice system and mass incarceration and this need for reform, you see it's a complex and a complicated road. And when we speak about it, many people are scared to touch on the topic of reformation because of its complexity. Because it calls out for a total reformation and reconstruction of our political, economic, education, and criminal justice system. Because mass incarceration, again, reflects the lack of it in this country. And it reflects the lack of reformation in all these institutions. And therefore, we need a solution to the interconnected injustices between all these institutions, not just one. For as Michelle Alexander states, it is now the time to make bold solutions. It is now the time to make bold statements. We must all come together and revolutionize the way we have operated this country. We must revolutionize the way every institution is ran. It is imperative. It needs to happen now because human lives depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shihani. I guess it takes a student to bring us to school, huh? I really appreciate your thoughts, and it's important to have your voice heard to start off this conference. So thank you so much. And just as a side note, I think you had, a week to prepare? It was Mary Collins, her English professor, that said, you got to get her here. She's a rock star. And bring her. I said, are you willing? Are you willing? So along with all the other papers she's doing at this time of year, she was able to put that together. So thank you so much. Can we have another round of applause?